Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a narrative that absolutely proves. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a narrative that absolutely proves the most powerful scripts out there, they aren't written in Hollywood studios. Nope, they're written right out there on the football pitch. We're going to unpack a truly remarkable sequence of events. We're talking about a story of absolute despair, an impossible promise, and ultimately one of the most stunning resolutions in the entire history of sports.
Sometimes the greatest stories don't begin with victory. They begin with heartbreak. Wow. The emotional stakes of our story today are just incredibly high, and they really do start in a place of profound sporting grief. I mean, we so often focus on the glittering trophies, right? But to truly understand the triumph, we have to sit for a moment with the devastating lows.
So, let's jump right into Chapter 1, the weight of heartbreak and a nation's heavy expectations. It really wasn't just one bad game. It was this compounding trauma. Back in 2014, the World Cup literally slips right through his fingers. He was just one step away from the ultimate prize. Then 2016 brings another final, and yet another heartbreak, and then another. Every single defeat just added another visible scar. The pressure built up over years, layer by layer, until finally in 2016 it broke him. Lionel Messi actually announced his retirement from the national team. And you gotta remember, the toxic environment surrounding him was just overwhelming. The world wasn't stopping to ask, hey, how is Messi actually feeling? They weren't looking at the real human toll of carrying that much pressure. Instead, the media, the pundits, the public, they were all shouting, he can never do it for Argentina. The noise was entirely focused on his perceived failures, completely ignoring his relentless effort. When that 2016 retirement announcement actually dropped, an entire nation essentially stopped breathing. The reaction was so visceral. Children literally cried in the streets. Adults, and even his own teammates, just stared at their televisions in pure disbelief. It was a moment of absolute paralyzing despair for a country where football is, let's be honest, almost a religion. It truly felt like the end of an era.
All right, Chapter 2, a child's impossible promise and a young fan's plea.
Enter Enzo Fernandez. Now, at this point in our timeline, Enzo was just a young midfielder, right? A dedicated fan who was still dreaming of one day wearing Argentina's iconic shirt. And like millions of other Argentinians, he simply couldn't accept a future without Messi on the pitch. So instead of just sitting there watching in sadness, he decided to write an emotional public message, perfectly channeling what countless fans were feeling. He wrote, "Please don't leave. Stay with us. We'll fight beside you. One day, we'll make you a world champion." Guys, this is the emotional pivot point of our whole story. It's a young boy reaching out through all that overwhelming negativity to offer his hero a lifeline. There is just such genuine warmth and honestly naive belief in these words. But of course, at that specific moment in time, it was viewed as a completely impossible promise. It sounded exactly like a child promising to just reach up and touch the moon. People laughed at the very idea. The cynicism was just off the charts. The consensus was basically, Argentina? World champions? Messi? No way. He'll never win the World Cup. The public simply couldn't see past the current heartbreak.
Moving on to Chapter 3, building a football family in the Qatar dressing room. The contrast here is just staggering. Gone was that old environment, the one built on fear, anxiety, and just toxic pressure, where a legend was desperately chasing his missing trophy while carrying the ghosts of past failures. Instead, this new generation of players in the Qatar dressing room, guys like Enzo, they had grown up watching Messi. They didn't just see him as their captain, he was their childhood, their hero, their actual reason for falling in love with football in the first place.
And this was their secret weapon. This new dressing room wasn't built on fear, it was built on laughter. We're talking passing around shared mate, inside jokes, blasting music through the speakers, and openly teasing the greatest footballer on earth as if you were just their older brother. It was this insulated, warm, and joyful environment that completely shielded them from the intense outside pressure.
And it all came down to a single number, 1. Because that was Argentina's ultimate secret in Qatar. They weren't 11 isolated stars buckling under the weight of a demanding nation. No, they were one united family, playing for each other, and especially playing for him.
Which brings us to Chapter 4, the ultimate redemption story, and the promise fulfilled. December 18, 2022, the final whistle blows. Argentina are world champions.
Messi falls to the ground, and in that single second, a literal lifetime of pressure, of agonizing defeats, of all that toxic criticism, it completely evaporates right into the desert sky. The loop had closed so perfectly. Think about it. On one side, 2016, you have teammates and fans begging him not to leave the sport. On the other side, 2022, those very same teammates are carrying him on their shoulders in ultimate triumph. The promise had actually been fulfilled. That young boy, Enzo Fernandez, who once wrote a letter dreaming of helping Messi, had done exactly that. He fought beside him and he helped make him a world champion.
So I really have to ask you, could any screenwriter have dared to invent this script? Seriously, think about it for a second. Because if someone had pitched this exact storyline years earlier, people would have said it was way too emotional, they'd say it's too unbelievable, a little too perfect. They would confidently tell you, yeah, that could never happen in the real world. But it did happen. And that is exactly why the 2022 World Cup wasn't just a football tournament. It became one of the absolute greatest redemption stories in sporting history. It is a massive testament to what happens when toxic pressure is replaced by a truly supportive family environment. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. If a child's impossible promise can rewrite